Jumping in and doing the other half of the, like I said, kind of P-shaped space that's in the middle of the back garden. There's a trail basically that runs the back around here, and if you go to the first video in this series of tour videos, I put up the drone and walked the trail, so you can see how the trail system kind of works here. Jumping in, this is an autumn lily encore azalea. It's a white flowering encore azalea. The occasional flower on this one gets a little bit of a purple stripe in it. A really great encore azalea. That one really is very reliable flowering. This one is stretched a little bit. You'll notice it's not super compact. We're going to finish this video with a really compact encore azalea on the other end. This one is a little bit thin because we had it over here in too much shade, and we moved it over here. And after it blooms, it's going to bloom in the fall, and then it's going to bloom again in the spring, and then I'm going to take it and cut about 1/3 off the top of it, and then it's going to be back to being full. This rhythm and blues salvia is one of the big bullies in the garden, and at some point we'll put up some sort of video talking about removing or really taming a few of the things that are in this garden that have really become almost problematic. This plant is just went through early in the season and just really got it back into a much narrower space, worked hard at it. 3/4 of the way through the season, 2/3 of the way through the growing season, here it is again, just absolutely eating everything around it. And if you see the really beautiful purple flower and the dark black calyx on it, hummingbird's favorite plant in the garden. Really stinky foliage, so nothing eats it, but I want you to look under there. It's not just wide because it gets wide, it's wide because it suckers. It's running under the ground. And popping up literally everywhere in the garden. This thing is just, I'm at the point right now I almost call it a menace. But if you have deer, if you have rabbits, if you have any of those kinds of problematic things in the garden, then you have really tough place, maybe this is a plant for you. We do have a variegated hydrangea paniculata back here, and it gets the occasional flower on it, and it had a flower cluster earlier on in the season, and I don't see one on it right now, but this is a variegated hydrangea paniculata called Yuki Gesho. Beautiful plant. That salvia is again trying to eat it, and it's one of those plants we have a tiny bit of a struggle with, because the question is do you put it in enough sun where it would flower more, but the variegated foliage would likely burn, or do you keep it back here and keep the foliage looking great and sacrifice some flowers? And we've got enough hydrangea paniculatas with flowers on them that we don't need them to flower. This one is just super striking back here, and we'll get that salvia under control a little bit soon enough. We added a wild ginger or a serum along the path going into the back. Again, with these paths, you're able to add lots of low-growing, interesting things along the paths. These will get flowers right down at the base that are super interesting, and I believe it had a flower on it when we put it in the ground earlier in the season. Great plants, really will tolerate some dry shade as well. When we go into the main entrance to the Ralston Arboretum, they're under the live oaks that are there and doing quite well, up on kind of a high place there as well. This is a Ralston Viburnum obavatum. This is a dwarf Viburnum obavatum. It is in almost a little too much shade back here, and it had some spiking growth trying to stretch on it a little bit earlier in the season, and in a video I cut it back, and I only had to do it one time, so that was it. As soon as the nighttime temperatures start to get a little bit cooler, it'll start flowering, and it will just flower and flower and flower. It's a native viburnum, but obviously it's a selection of our native Viburnum obavatum that's compact growing. They've got a bunch of them planted, and we did a video on the Garden Plants with Jim Putnam channel on this plant, and we shot it over at the library at NC State, and they were like this, and they looked really great, and they bloomed all the time, and then for some reason on campus they decided to start meatballing them and have cut them into weird squares. So I don't think they're going to bloom as much as they originally did over there. There is a golden Oakland holly. There was a green Oakland holly about 2 videos ago. This is the golden Oakland holly. Steph's going around to that side because most of the variegation in the brighter side is over here because it's in the more sun. This side over here has got a lot of shade on it, and it looks okay. It's in great shape. This plant has not been pruned one single time since it went in the ground. It was about 2 feet tall maybe, or something like that when it went in the ground 3.5 years ago or something approximately, and it's now 8 feet tall, and it's literally never been pruned. Just is unbelievable how narrow this thing grows without any assistance. Some of the other narrow growing upright hollies like this definitely require some shearing to keep them this narrow. So I really love this plant. There's one in the front container out front, and it's gonna go away because it's been in that container for 3 or 4 years, and we don't need another one in the ground anywhere, so we'll end up giving it away or whatever. But this one's gonna stay right where it is, and it's just really great piece that we wanted to put a border down the middle of this bed of some medium to taller growing things to create some mystery for this side, so that you definitely want to walk on this path around to where I'm at now to find out what's over here. That's kind of the purpose of this larger growing things right down the middle of this bed. One plant we were definitely missing from a dry shade garden is the Evergreen Solomon Seal. It's actually not in the same genus as Solomon Seal. We do have some variegated Solomon Seal and a couple variegated Solomon Seal, but this is common name, Evergreen Solomon Seal. This is another one we see frequently in drier shade gardens. I think it'll take moist but well-drained soil as well. But when we see really, when we do tours of shade gardens that are definitely dry in our area, that plant is almost always on the list. And there's some planted in the Hell Strip in a couple places in the neighborhood, and does extremely well between the driveway and the or between the road and the sidewalk. Begonias, there's some random annuals planted along here and there. Angel wing, or winged begonia there, doing pretty well. There's a couple things back here we probably could have fertilized just a bit more and gotten a hair more out of them. This is a deciduous azalea called Solar Glow. There's also one called Solar Flare. They're both Southern Living Plant Collection ones. They're Buddy Lee's introductions, and we started this video with a Buddy Lee introduction, that Autumn Lily Encore Azalea. Encore Azaleas are his. In fact, we missed a White Wedding Hydrangea paniculata over here. We just skipped right by it, but we showed another one along the driveway out front, so there has been another one. It's kind of being eaten by a butterfly bush that I think is actually going to go away, and also that salvia. Going to be a little rearranging in that space. That hydrangea stretching a bit because it's not getting quite enough light, but it's going to end up with more space next year. I think we made the decision after we shot the video yesterday that we're going to take out that butterfly bush that's on the other side over there. We have enough butterfly bushes, and that one is occupying a big chunk of space there. But anyway, this deciduous azalea will bloom really bright color flowers April-ish, somewhere in there, a little bit later typically than some of the evergreen azaleas here. The anticipation on these is what's great. You see, they're already budded up. It's August. It's August, and it's going to be 6 to 7 months before those start to show any color on them, which is kind of cool. It's one of the main reasons I love deciduous azaleas and evergreen rhododendrons as well, is those buds are on them for all that time. So there's this long anticipation. That Empress of China dogwood that's out in the front garden does that. Those flower buds are on it from the winter right on through the spring until May or June, when it actually comes into flower. There's a variegated Brunera down here, and just like the other Brunera that are in the garden, they look awfully rough by August here. Plant comes out of the ground, looks absolutely fantastic in the spring. Flowers, we had one out in the front we didn't even show because it's completely died back to the ground at this point of the season, just because we had a 106-degree day and lots of other upper 90-degree days. I'll jump in here real quick, and this is the other side of this Viburnum nudum. I briefly talked about it yesterday. Probably should have done it on the other side because it's leaning out and looks great from the other side of the bed. But this is a native Viburnum, just like the Viburnum obavatum over there, just like the deciduous azalea right there, and probably have a few more natives right here around me. I do, actually. Joe Pye weeds over there as well. The Viburnum nudum's just a fantastic 4-season plant. Comes out in the spring, blooms, has great foliage during the summertime, sets of fruit that the birds come along and eat, has great fall color, really well behaved. This plant hasn't been pruned at all, and it's extremely well behaved. Look how vertical it is, which I really like. I can really, on a 0.19 acre lot where you're trying to grow 300 plus different species of plants, plants that go straight up and down, like the golden Oakland holly or this Viburnum nudum or the Tokyo Tower Cyananthus next to it. Vertical plants really perform well for us here. Toad lily's really thriving back here. We have a variegated toad lily in another location that would have been, I hope we covered it in the video as we were coming along there. Now I can't remember if we did. It's a little bit hidden where it is. It's more newly planted than that one. That one is got some size on it over time, but that thing, it just blooms and blooms during the summertime, and such interesting flowers on toad lilies. And again, it's been another plant that it's just got no water back here, very little extra water, and it's thriving in those conditions. I got a pittosporum next to it that's evergreen that I got from a rare plant auction at the Ralston Arboretum, another perfectly well behaved, upright, narrow plant. Farfugium, which I can't, recommend enough for folks in the South. All the lots of interesting green foliage, variegated foliage, even lettuce looking foliage, Farfugium out there. They don't bloom until October ish for us, almost November, and the pollinators absolutely go crazy for them. So it's just a great addition to a shade garden in the South, where you get an extra bang for your buck, having something flower 2-3 months after most everything else will have quit out here. The acanthus is another thing that's pretty much done for the season. This thing took 3 years to really get going. You can see how many flower spikes we had on it this season. This is something else we'll come through here and actually cut these down in the next week or two. But you can see the foliage is now kind of worn out on it. It looked great all season long, but again, if you plant an acanthus like this, Acanthus mollis, it takes 2 or 3 years for it to really put on some real growth and really start flowering, especially in a space like this where it's a little bit dry, drier conditions than the rest of the garden. Couple of hosta hidden back here by the acanthus. This one's called Miss Micah. Really like this one a lot. It's definitely going to get transplanted later in the fall, and we'll show that in a video. We've got a few perennials that we've got to pop out of the ground and either divide or move. So that will be part of that. I like that variegation on that one, just that light green, or that chartreuse color green next to the darker green. Really do like that one a lot. There is an oak leaf hydrangea that also needs to move. This is Little Honey, and we actually had a deer come in here and actually just bite this thing off, just take this thing to the ground last year. Thought it was kind of done and didn't really pay any attention to it, and it's come back really well, but again, the acanthus is now eating it, so we'll go ahead and move the oak leaf hydrangea out of here. I don't think it would ever flower either. It's just because it's so smothered back here. And then that last hosta that's in that spot is called Dream Queen, another really showy one. And again, it's about to gain some breathing room in a month or month and a half or so. We added a coleus and a begonia and several other. This is the thing we do here, is we'll add a few annuals. Some we start from seeds, some from cuttings, some from big bloomers that we can get in really small containers, and we'll fill in any bare places in the garden so that they kind of stay covered up. We don't end up with a ton of weeds on them. And then there's a Rhodia japonica over to the left of it, and it's starting to get eaten a little bit by the 3 Mojo pittosporum that are next to it. And the Mojo pittosporum are just outstanding ornamental plants. These 3 have not been pruned in the 3.5 years or so they've been in the ground here. That's just, nothing could be easier than these Mojo pittosporum. And I guess they're getting maybe 2.5 hours of direct sun, and then the rest of the time they're in kind of filtered or bright light. You know, the trees are limbed up pretty high here, so when I say shade, it's still pretty bright. Even this time of day as we're filming toward the end of, you know, it's 6 o'clock or whatever, and the sun has gone well past this oak tree back here, but you can still see how bright it is, you know, because again, it's all limbed up big and tall. There's a diamond spire gardenia here, and it was crowded by Japanese maple that was in the last video and a couple other things here. So it hasn't grown exactly like it's supposed to grow, which is more upright and narrow. We have another one planted in another space that's probably closer to the actual form that this one's supposed to have. Again, it just had something laying right up against it right here. But it is in bloom, and it has a lot of buds on it too. So tons of flower buds and tons of open flowers on it. It's extremely fragrant, as you would expect from a gardenia, and really interesting foliage on this one, on Diamond Spire. Just unique in every way. Typically though, grows upright and narrow, which is one of the main things. Several things make it unique. That foliage, and then that upright narrow habit. I don't know what I'll do to it. I may just leave it just like it is. It's happy, so maybe it just stays, you know, exactly like it is. We do have some ground cover ajuga down here below, in between the camellia we're about to talk about and the Mojo pittosporum. We have a lot of different ajuga in this garden, a long list of ajuga, and they're just great for filling spaces like that. You know, that's a spot that doesn't have to get mulched. It flowers, the rabbits don't eat it. You know, you can't, it's just hard to miss. That darker foliage looks great against this variegation in these Mojo pittosporums. So it's just kind of hard to miss with that. Then this is an October Magic Ruby Camellia. We have 2 of them. There's one that'll be in the final video, which is the next video in this series. It's starting to bud up now, and I can see flower buds forming all over it. This one's a really, really dark pink to the point of being red. I guess we would call it red, a ruby red color. The Camellia sasanquas will bloom for us sometime late October, November, December, and if they happen to get too cold too early, they'll carry a few flower buds potentially over just a bit past that. The main thing I want you to focus in on this October Magic Ruby is that's 4 years in the ground, and look how perfect that plant is. We've pruned a branch here or a branch there off of it. That's it. The foliage is clean. It has that compact habit. It just doesn't require anything of us, and it's going to bloom for 3 months, 2.5 months, when nothing else is flowering almost in the entire garden. We have 3 or 4 Nandinas in the garden, and this may be the coolest of them, although we did see a variegated one earlier, but this San Gabriel is really just amazing. And again, it's not an invasive one. It has never seen it flower, doesn't fruit. It just has this incredible soft texture to it. I will say that it ranks as the #1 stepped on plant in this garden. It was located over there and got stepped on one time, and then it's located here, and just in the process of shooting video, I end up occasionally on top of it by accident. And so, but it survives being stomped on. So that's its claim to fame. Lilac always got great form to it, great foliage, and like a lavender color flower, and it will flower. They're budded up already. They're in the process of budding up. This will bloom heavily. In fact, buds are really forming on it. This will bloom heavily in mid-September to early October, and then it'll bloom heavily again in March or April. We'll occasionally get some summer flowers on it too. Down in the Gulf, I tend to see just that longer window. You'll see that more summer bloom down in the Gulf. For us up here in zone 8A, but 7B, 8A, we typically get big spring bloom, big fall bloom, 1 or 2 flowers during the summertime. But I really like this one. If you're just looking for one that has overall form, habit, foliage, and flower, this is a really good one. And I like that lavender color because it just matches, you know, the flower matches everything. A couple more things and we'll wrap this up. We do have a fall blooming or late summer to fall blooming salvia planted down below that we got from Ram Gibberson's garden. You can see the first yellow flower on it here right at the end of the summer. This one's got an interesting foliage. This one I think can run just a bit, and we've got it, you know, right on the edge of a path. So, and there's really kind of surrounded by a tough neighborhood. So I'm hoping, you know, I don't think it's going to be able to get out and go. And then I'll finish up with some Asclepias tuberosa that's popping up next to the red bud and over the peonies. Again, another one that's in a tough neighborhood over here. Flowers all summer, and then eventually, hopefully, monarchs will take advantage of it, and the caterpillars will eat it to the ground in the fall. Sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't. But you know, certainly always get the flowers. That the flowers on these are so complex. They're delicate little, you know, orange things in that cluster, but each individual flower is just so weirdly complex. Just kind of wild. But again, I love that orange pop of color in the garden, and just, you know, great pollinator plant. There you go. There's the middle section. You know, we've gone into 2 videos in a circle, you know, around the outside of it, and we'll jump over here and do herb garden and a few other things around the front of the shed, and then this thing will be wrapped up. Thanks for following along.